Imagine this. The wind howls around you. The temperature is dropping, and the icy chill of the Atlantic Ocean seems to penetrate every layer of your clothing. You're alone in a tiny life raft. No land in sight. No one coming to help you. Just the endless, cold, vast expanse of ocean. You're Stephen Callahan, a man who had set out on what was supposed to be a solo sailing adventure across the Atlantic Ocean. A journey that would take you from the coast of Europe, the U.S., but what should have been a life-changing adventure became a nightmare that would challenge every ounce of your will to survive. The storm hit without warning. You were just a few days into your journey. The ocean, once calm and peaceful, turned violent. A violent squall raged around you. Waves rose like mountains, crashing against your boat, ripping the sails, and tearing apart your vessel. It was an unforgiving fight, one that you couldn't win. The boat cracked in half, water flooded in, and within minutes, you were left clinging to a tiny life raft, watching your dreams and your only means of survival sink below the waves. What would you do? Panic? Cry out for help? Maybe, but that wouldn't help. You know that the only chance you have to survive is to think clearly and stay alive for as long as possible. In those first moments, your heart pounds in your chest. The realization sets in. You're alone, lost, with only the tools on your raft to survive. The elements are against you, the sharks circling below, and the immense loneliness threatening to break your spirit. The first few days were brutal. The life raft was barely big enough for you to stretch out, but you had to make do. Food was limited. You had just a few emergency rations. Water was even more precious. There wasn't much to drink, so you relied on a small solar still, a device meant to turn seawater into fresh water, but it barely produced enough to survive. You rationed the little food you had, knowing that every piece could be the difference between life and death. The loneliness was a constant companion. There were no ships, no signs of land, and the waves seemed to stretch forever in every direction. Every day was a struggle, a fight to keep your hope alive. But you couldn't stop. Not yet. You knew that your chances of survival weren't just about endurance. They were about ingenuity. You had to make use of everything you could. You caught fish using a spear made from a broken piece of the raft. Sometimes you succeeded, sometimes you didn't. You learned how to store your catch to make sure it didn't spoil. You had to figure out ways to stay warm, even when the ocean breeze cut through your layers of clothing like knives. And then there were the sharks. You could feel their presence before you saw them. Their fins would break the surface of the water, circling your raft. They were testing, waiting for a weakness, but you couldn't afford to show fear. You couldn't let them know how desperate you were. As the days passed, your body began to wear down. You were losing weight, your skin becoming cracked and burned from the sun. The salt water had dried out your lips and eyes. Your body was struggling to hold on, and your mind was starting to slip. The isolation, the endless hours on the raft, the feeling that you would never see land again, it all started to break you down. But then, after 50 days of drifting at sea, something unexpected happened. You saw a ship on the horizon. For a brief moment, you felt the rush of adrenaline, the hope that this could be the end of your nightmare. But the ship didn't come any closer. It passed by. It was too far away to signal. You were left wondering if you would ever get out of this hellish isolation. Day after day, you kept your hope alive. You fought the urge to give up, even when everything inside you screamed to stop. And then, on day 76, after almost 2.5 months at sea, you finally saw it. Land. It wasn't much, just a small island, but it was land. It was your salvation. Weak, dehydrated, and barely able to move, you managed to signal passing boats. You were rescued, pulled from the sea, and taken to safety. But you didn't just survive. You conquered an environment that was designed to kill you. You endured 76 days at sea, alone, with nothing but your wits and your will to live. You think you could survive what Stephen Callahan did? Well, what if you were stranded somewhere even more dangerous? Imagine this. You fall 200 feet off a cliff, alone on a rocky beach, with no food, no water, and no way to call for help. That's exactly what happened to Angela Hernandez. Click here to hear her incredible survival history.